Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Friday, and welcome to this week's installment of Romance and Modern Mythology. This week we're going to be exploring the Stargate universe, particularly the series Stargate SG-1, and we're going to be taking a little peek at the relationship between Samantha Carter and Jack O'Neill. This is one of the better done stories of will they or won't they that I have seen in modern fiction. Ordinarily, the reasons and the excuses for why a particular couple can't be together, they just don't ring true, particularly if you're trying to drag out the romantic tension over the course of many series. Whereas in the case of Carter and O'Neill, there was a very good, very overarching, very firm, permanent reason of why they could not be together and explore the possibility of a closer relationship. And of course that was because they were both members of the military, in particular the Air Force. And so romantic relationship between a superior officer and a subordinate officer, particularly in the direct chain of command, just definitely not kosher at all. So as we see their relationship develop, because they had a bit of a rocky beginning, and of course as things go on they start accepting each other as teammates, and of course Carter is she's a good officer and a good soldier, so she's definitely not challenging his right to command in any term. But as the team comes together and everyone starts to gel, you begin to see little teeny tiny signs that perhaps there's just something a little more at work between Carter and O'Neill. And the longer you go through this series, the more pronounced that becomes, that there is something non-professional at play. Although in their dealings with one another and everything we see in camera, you'll see that definitely in public and for most of the time, even when, if they happen to be off by themselves, they maintain carefully correct military etiquette, not breaching boundaries or anything of that kind. You can see the effort they are putting forth to simply let it be a professional relationship. And you can understand why. They were both career military, and certainly Carter had a great, she was younger than O'Neill, so she had a lot more years that she probably potentially wanted to serve in that context. And the nature of their job, it was literally save the Earth and the galaxy while you're at it. That's a pretty big career, that's a pretty big job, so it's not something that you're going to just walk away from on a whim. And I have, as I've started analyzing this relationship, I think maybe that played a role in their thinking of, well, attraction, but I mean, I'm not going to give up my entire life just because I happen to be attracted to someone. This will probably pass in time, and you can see the rationalization start to pile up. And it does make sense, because no, you do not uproot your entire life just because you happen to feel attracted to someone, especially if acting upon that attraction would result in life-altering changes to one or both parties. You just don't do that. So it makes absolute sense why they would refrain, why they would create deliberate distance between themselves. And you do periodically through the series see them getting involved in a romantic sense with other people. But even in those times there is some hint that the other person isn't entirely cool. But you see them control themselves because, like, I can't object, I'm not in a position to object. I cannot, because of my job, be with this person, so it is wholly unreasonable for me to feel anything other than happy for them if they happen to find someone, but I'm still not cool with it. And so you have this ongoing emotional turmoil. This is made worse because there's an episode in which there's essentially an alien lie detector test that they have to pass, and in order to pass it, the nature of their actual feelings for one another does come up, because when they tried to hide that, the machine picked it up, and it was causing problems, because this machine was designed to protect people who were sleeper agents, didn't know it, and who were going to be a danger to various members of the leadership on Earth and the leadership of within the alien race. And they end up having to say that, well, that one time we were on a mission and we were stuck and there was a force field, couldn't do anything about the force field. The building was about to blow up, but I didn't leave this person behind because I care about them more than I should. Now, a decision was made that that information did not have to leave the room because the only witnesses were each other, the alien who was operating, the lie detector machine. Everyone else was removed from the situation. But it had been spoken aloud. This had been acknowledged in some terms, even though it was an acknowledgement of we can carry on as normal. And you see other instances in the series in which there was a memory issue, or their identities had been erased, or something that happened to where they were on more informal terms, and they didn't have the rank of the Air Force and its rules and regulations hampering how they naturally reacted to one another. And in each and every case, you see that they weren't just friendly with each other, they didn't just work well together. You could see that there were genuine, actual feelings. And of course, at the end of each of these episodes, which, you were starting to see some boundaries crumble once they came back to who they were and they remembered, their relative positions, they had to bring those walls back up and we're just going to carry on and pretend like this isn't happening. Can't act on it because your rank, my rank, our jobs, the nature of our situation, all this and that, just can't go there. This feeling is made even worse because there were several episodes within the series in which you were dabbling with parallel universes. And in these parallel universes, without exception, Carter and O'Neill, they were together, they were engaged, they were married. Carter was on maternity leave because she just had a baby. You could just see the natural course of events for these characters. And so you kept getting signs over and over again that left to their own devices, if it was not for this one impediment, that they would indeed be a couple, and that if they were anything like their counterparts in these other universes, they were going to be a successful couple. They were going to have a happy relationship. They had enough substance in their relationship to make that a marriage, to start a family. You put all of that together, and the reason, and the Air Force being used as a reason for them not to be able to be together, it starts to wear a little bit thin. You start wondering, as an audience member, what if Carter wasn't so much of a rule follower and didn't view these things and these boundaries as essentially sacrosanct? What if she had a different mindset of, well, I love my career and I love my job, but maybe that's not all there is to my life. Maybe that isn't ultimately even the most important thing of my life. And then you also find yourself wondering, what if O'Neill hadn't showed the restraint that he did? What if he had been, enacting the mindset of, I'm not going to be messing up her life, I'm not going to be taking action, I'm not going to do anything of that kind? What if they had been reacting a little bit differently, and you kind of you start wanting them to. You want someone to break. You want someone to break that final boundary because it just makes so much sense for them to come together as a couple. Now, it does bring up the issue of what role does work really play? Because you can tell that Carter's career has always been very important to her. She's a very intellectual person. She wants to fulfill her talent. She wants to serve her country. She loves the adventure of everything that she does. And you can tell that she was taught, as so many women of her generation and my generation and successive generations were, about, that the importance of building a career is somehow this sacrosanct thing. And that how many times are we told as we're growing up of, don't let a man get in your way, don't change your life because of a man, and this is essentially saying that a man is never a good enough reason for you to change what you were doing, or even reassess if what you thought you wanted is what you still want right now, and if it will continue to be what you want in the future. There is a very deliberate social attempt to prevent women from addressing that question, or thinking of, maybe I can give a little bit. Maybe I can negotiate. Maybe all of these goals that the rest of the world tells me I should have, maybe while those are important, maybe they're not the most important thing. Maybe I want a period of my life where I am focusing more so on my personal life. Maybe I do want to kind of take a break from the rest of the world if I financially can and actually raise my own children. There's a lot of pressure to not think that, and there are certain segments of the feminist movement that will actively send the message to women that if you do anything like that, you are letting the side down, and the patriarchy wins, and all this blah, blah, blahing. But no one ever asks the question, is any of this actually making people happy? Or maybe there comes a point where you realize a relationship is important enough for you that you want to forego some things for a period of time, not necessarily for forever, but you want to forego that so you can pursue something that's going to have longer lasting meaning. Because no matter how much we might love our chosen field of work, that job is not going to be sitting with us in our old age, holding our hands and being there for us. It's not how it's going to work. And there's only so much fulfillment and satisfaction we can take from any form of work. Whereas, the satisfaction of having your own family, having a loving marriage, having those interpersonal connections, having all of that love in your life, that is something that has the potential to last a lot longer. And never forget that as women, we have a time frame that we have to work with. And yes, I realize that there are women who have children later in life and who are successful enough to get married and have a permanent relationship later in life. The reality is it's so much easier to do those things when we're a bit younger, and when you leave it to the 11th hour, there's a higher chance that none of that will actually happen for you, and then it'll be too late. Men don't have that same kind of pressure, and it doesn't matter how unfair, unequal, unwoke any of that is. It's simply the reality of our existence, and that's something that I started thinking about in the case of Carter. She wasn't getting any younger. I'm not saying she was old, but she wasn't getting any younger. So decisions about what do I really want in life? Do I want to be married? Do I want to have children? Am I really so focused on my job that I'm willing to give up the potential of all of those things for the sake of my work? That's heavy stuff. It's really, really heavy stuff. Because no matter what any of us do, we cannot escape the natural rhythms of life. They will take place whether we cooperate with those rhythms or not. So we have Carter and we have O'Neill, and as the series goes on, we're just seeing there's all kinds of mutual feelings, but they're taking very little action. In fact, they're trying to actively find other partners, probably in hopes that this will be less of a problem, of maybe it was in the tone of acceptance of, well, I can't have this person, but maybe I can be with someone else who I could be just as happy with. But that just isn't how it ends up working out. Now, eventually, O'Neill's position changes, and it's at that point where it's strongly hinted that their relationship already also changed, and that they were able to explore this. Even with all of that, and even with, thinking about, the cautionary message of, you can't wait too long to have everything that you want. Maybe some of the sacrifices you make for the sake of your work aren't actually worth it. And maybe it's at a certain point you do need to reassess your priorities just in general. Because it could have easily have gone the other way. They could have thought, well, we have all these feelings, but we're not acting on it. Maybe the fact that we're not willing to take action says something about the nature of our feelings. Maybe this is overinflated in both of our minds. Maybe actions do speak louder than words, and the fact that we haven't uprooted our lives, maybe that says we shouldn't. It's a tough call. Because think about, in the case of these characters, in order to even begin, something has to change a great deal about their professional relationship for that even to be possible without it ending both of their careers. I mean, just imagine being at the beginning of a relationship. You haven't even really gone on a date, let alone lived together or talked about marriage or children or any of the other important life-altering things, and having to already make life-altering decisions because of the potential your relationship has, not as a result of a culminated period of time in which you have explored this relationship and have realized that it is something that is worth pursuing. That's a big ask. It really, really is. Now, fortunately, these characters realized that they did mean enough to each other to where it was going to be worthwhile taking that kind of risk and just facing whatever happened to face. Now, not only is this a pretty you know, I would say a relatively satisfying conclusion. It would have been more satisfying to have more overt signs that yes, indeed, they are together, it's working well, everything is fine now. But it's still an ending for them that works, even with its ambiguities, even with the implication that there's stuff going on behind closed doors that we just aren't privy to. Because at the very least, it's an honest thing. That they aren't necessarily advertising their connection, because they are still in the military, even if he's not necessarily any longer in her direct chain of her command. There is still some awkwardness, but they're prioritizing each other at last. And I think at the end of it, that is really what you want to see as an audience member, of someone who's actually prioritizing the other person and the bond that they have over all of these other things that we're told are important and should always take precedence. Now, the thing about Carter and O'Neill is that it does tend to make a person question about what are the foundations of my own life. You know, am I so focused on my work that I'm not making room for anything that's actually human? Or if I am focusing on the more human aspects of life and seeking out a relationship, trying to form something permanent, am I building with strong enough materials that it's going to be able to stand up to all the ebb and flows of the tides of life? Yeah, these are scary questions, and I keep coming back to this idea of risk and the exploration of risk, and at one point do you find yourself pushed over the edge to where you say, screw the risk, it's worth facing it, I just need to do this. I need to be able to tell this person yes, and to be able to try to forge something meaningful with them. Heavy stuff, scary stuff, and as I said, I think their story was pretty well written, especially given the nature of the show and the nature of their careers. So that's the main observations I have from that, and my main takeaways, of course, from it are, you know, looking at where are our own priorities in life. Are we willing to set certain things aside if that means that we're able to maintain a powerful bond with another human being? And what does it say about us if we never decide that anyone is worth that effort or worth the emotional risk? Things to contemplate. Now, I'm not sure where our travels in modern mythology as far as romance is concerned will take us next week. I guess that'll be a surprise. So for now, I will see you in another video. Bye.